Hi there, welcome to the follow-up, where we run down the week's news. I'm Tanner Maxwell, video editor, and with me today are managing editor Kimmy Rayleigh, campus editor Joseph Diebold, and city editor Patrick Svitek. Let's go ahead and start with city today. Patrick, I heard you interviewed Mayor Tisdahl this week?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
For the first time in a few years, she sat down with about, I think, 4 or 5 Evanston reporters for a local TV show. And kind of the major takeaway that we saw from the Northwestern angle was that she really emphasized how much progress she has seen in town-gown relations, especially since University President Morton Shapiro took over. And she credited him specifically with helping make a lot of that progress. She said he has the personality, he has the attitude, and I think the specific kind of soundbite that we walked away from the interview with was he's someone who understands that a great university needs a great town. And so a lot of praise for President Shapiro.
Kimmy, what are your thoughts on this? You've been reporting the city since your freshman year. Do you believe her?
I think there are definitely areas in which town-gown relations have improved. If you look even recently at Game Day, that was definitely an event that went really smoothly both for the university and for the city. But I also think that there are for sure areas where town-gown relations have been strained over the years. You can look recently to the brothel law, definitely something that was very controversial, especially about 3 years ago, and that was an area that definitely required a lot of work going forward. So I think in some areas the relations have definitely improved, but in others there are probably still room for improvement.
And Mayor Tisdahl, too, during the interview, cited the Ohio State game as a great example, a great recent example of everyone getting along. And she said Northwestern students and off-campus partying weren't even really on her radar as an elected official. She was more concerned about Ohio State fans. And she did say that they were well behaved, but she did cite it as an example of the progress we've made.
All right, let's move back to the campus. Joseph, I heard there was some stuff going on with John Evans. What did they find out this week?
Yeah, so the John Evans Study Committee was formed by the university last winter to investigate the role of John Evans in an 1864 massacre of the Cheyenne and Arapaho Native American tribes. John Evans, the founder of Northwestern, so the university is sort of questioning, what role he had in that, and particularly what financial benefit was given to the university based on that, whether there's any sort of blood money that kind of remains at the university. And basically, I think there's a lot more to come from the John Evans Study Committee. There wasn't a ton that we learned from this public event. I think some of the students were sort of frustrated by what they felt like was some pushback from the committee. Obviously, the students who have been very involved on this issue, particularly the Native American and Indigenous Student Alliance, wants to see sort of more acknowledgement from the university about what Evans's role was. But what we got was sort of, saying it's still unclear. The historical record is iffy. There's no clear evidence that Evans was directly involved in this massacre and that he then transferred sort of some of the money that was gained from that basically colonialism back to Northwestern. So certainly I think a lot more to come on this issue, but not necessarily, more productive this particular meeting than maybe some of the recent meetings and forums surrounding race at Northwestern, but certainly I think some frustration from both sides was demonstrated.
And do they have more meetings planned in the future to discuss this?
I don't know if anything specific. The committee has pledged to release a report by June, and then the provost and the university will sort of decide where to go from there. I'm sure there will be more public hearings and public forums, basically places for the community to have their opinion be heard.
All right. And on a related note, ASG met this week also. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a little bit more positive diversity news. ASG's Chief Diversity Officer, the Associate Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion. It's a position that has been open since last May when there was sort of a dramatic attempt to confirm one nominee who was rejected. But this nomination went off pretty much without a hitch. The sophomore who will be taking that position, Thaddeus Tukes, is actually the only person on campus studying both journalism and jazz studies. So he pointed to that as sort of one example of almost being a hyper minority. But yeah, so the questioning was certainly much more friendly on that, and it seems like he will now he'll now be able to move forward in that position and be able to solve the still numerous challenges that are facing ASG, the whole student body, and the entire campus really on these issues.
Joseph, why do you think the questioning was more friendly this time around? Did ASG kind of do more planning, or did they just kind of ensure that the candidate that they put up for the position was someone who was more widely liked?
Certainly, it seems like Thaddeus has been more involved with some of the multicultural groups on campus than the previous nominee was, and also, I think after sort of what went down last May, I don't think that was something that a lot of senators wanted to go through again. Certainly, they were. They were in their questioning very sort of thorough about what his experiences are with diversity and what his plans are, but I don't think it was a situation where people wanted to go through another sort of nomination fight so soon after the last one.
So earlier this year, ASG, I know, changed the description for the position. Can you just talk a little bit about how you think that affected the process and how that might have played a role?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, last year the nominee was a white man, and so some members of ASG expressed concern that such a person wasn't fit to sort of be the chief diversity officer. I think many other students had an opposition because they felt like Stephen, who was the nominee then, hadn't necessarily been an advocate for diversity on campus, hadn't been involved with some of the multicultural groups, FMO, Alianza, etc. So certainly I think there was opposition from a couple fronts there. But ASG did clarify the nomination just to sort of let everyone know that, race, gender, no specific characteristics would qualify or disqualify anyone for the position. Certainly I think that that probably helped the process. But sort of all of the things we've heard about Thaddeus so far have been positive from the higher level ASG officials, and obviously we'll be talking more with him as the quarter goes on about what his plans are.
All right, let's finish up with some more city news. Patrick, what do you have for us?
Okay, another big headline in the city we had this week was actually something that we held over from last week when Evanston Township Supervisor Gary Gaspard tendered his resignation. He sent a letter to the mayor and the city clerk on Thursday evening, and he basically said in a very brief letter he just doesn't have the time to complete the job. And this was less than 5 months after he was elected. He was elected in April. And it also kind of comes after a series of decisions he made that left city officials, specifically township trustees, with the impression that he just may have not understood the entirety or the full scope of the position, which is a part-time job.
Can you just talk a little bit about what the township does and specifically, sort of the dissolution issue that's been going on now for a few years?
Sure. Well, the township is pretty much, the township has the same boundaries as the city, so geographically they're one and the same. It's just a separate governing entity, and it's responsible primarily for general assistance for the needy and tax advice for residents. So it really is a bit of a symbol of social justice in Evanston, and so therefore a lot of people have a very emotional attachment to who's running it and how the township is functioning. And like you just mentioned with the dissolution, Evanston aldermen are probably going to approve a binding referendum question to put on the ballot in March and ask Evanston voters if they want to dissolve the township. It is a very small entity within the government here in Evanston. I think its budget is really just a fraction of what the city government budget is, and so the city is primarily just looking to have things run a little more smoothly if they were able to kind of fold what the township does into what the city government does.
All right, that'll do it for this week. Thank you for joining us, and be sure to join the conversation as well on our website, dailynorthwestern.com.